Hello, humans. I haven't made a video for a while, so here's a new one. It's on flower madness, which is kind of something that I just came across and was interested in. So let's talk about it. I found in a Qing Dynasty book by Chen Shiduo that he talks about this flower madness. And so here's what he says. If a woman suffers from flower madness, which is Huadian are the characters, she suddenly develops epilepsy, but I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. That may not be correct. Um, but it does have the term for epilepsy. So when she sees a man, she will hug him tightly and refuse to let him go. This is due to longing for a man that she cannot have. Suddenly, her condition has the intensity of gale force winds and torrential rains. She has no sense of shame. When she sees a man, she believes he's her lover. This is withered liver wood with blazing internal fire. Her pulse will be wiry and go beyond the tsunko. I'll talk about that. The treatment method should be to use ingredients to level the liver, dissipate constraint, and eliminate evils. Okay, so before I move on, I want to talk about a few different things. Longing for a man that she cannot have. I did a whole series on that because that's like a thing that ancient male doctors thought that women who didn't have a sexual partner and they only imagined it as a man, that these women could have certain types of emotional problems and physical problems. And so this is a variation on that. The pulse that goes with that is wiry and goes, down below the thumb. It goes up, onto the thenar eminence or up the root of the thumb, not just in the normal positions of the radial artery. So then let's see what else I want to say. A lot of people would translate this as like calm the liver or something like that. It's this word ping. But actually, ping can mean to level off something that's rising up, that's sticking out. And so if she has liver fire, that's sticking up. And the reason why I kind of choose to select the word level is because every time they use that ping is for something that's like counterflowing upward, like liver or pingwei san, the stomach is counterflowing upward. So I think it not only just means to calm it, there are different ways to calm things, but it means to like bring back down whatever's rushing up. And constraint here means liver chi, constraint, which some of you might call liver chi stagnation. So those are a few words I wanted to talk about. Okay, so the first thing that gave me a big problem with this is that there's this character Dian. And then, in the first sentence, there's also this character Dian Xian. So Dian can mean epilepsy, but it can also mean madness. When it's combined with this other word, xian, it definitely means epilepsy. And when it's combined with quang, it means, often people translate it as like mania depression or mania withdrawal or, something like that. So this is actually the more withdrawal aspect, although I'm not sure that's appropriate here either. She doesn't seem very withdrawn. She's like out there. So anyway, this word Dian could mean an epilepsy. It could mean a severe form of mental illness. And here, the description does not sound like epilepsy. It just doesn't. However, it's under the heading, this passage is under the heading of epilepsy. And so, what I think is that this doctor did not clearly differentiate between the two conditions, epilepsy and certain types of madness. So, I think this is much more like a type of madness and not like a type of epilepsy. So, I translate it as madness everywhere except when he actually says jianshen, which should be epilepsy, but here I believe it's not. I want to talk about the word flower because this is flower madness. What's flower got to do with it? It's often a euphemism for things to do with sexual attraction and romance and stuff like that. It's more often used by men for beautiful women, and romance and short-term romance, like a one-night stand or a flirtation. And here it seems to mean, female sexual desire, but it's definitely associated with attraction and desire and romance. And even there's a term like that's literally peach blossom or peach flower. And that often can refer to a short term romance that maybe breaks somebody's heart, or an improper relationship, a flirtation that becomes an affair when it's totally inappropriate. And it's generally looked at as tempting, but you're going to cry in the end. You're going to regret it in the end. So that's what flower has to do here, is it has to do with sex. And then I mentioned already that a pulse that's wiry and goes distally but beyond the Zun position has been associated with this longing for a man she cannot have in writings going back 1,000 years before this, or more than that. So it's a very specific pulse. Whenever you see that pulse, it's referring to a woman who has desires that can't be fulfilled in terms of partnership. And it was very much thought that women who weren't having sex, or women who were unmarried, or something like that, were at risk for certain types of both emotional and physical conditions. And so that included widows, nuns, palace maidens, who, if they worked in the palace, they couldn't be married, or a woman whose husband was traveling for years at a time, or a teenage girl who was old enough to be married but wasn't yet married. These kind of people were susceptible to having certain conditions. And here's, like, this is a new one, but I do have a bunch of other videos if you're interested in that. So just, look through my YouTube channel. Anyway, moving on. He gives a formula. He says was passed down by the heavenly master. We don't know who the heavenly master is. Actually, there's an introduction to this text, and it says that he got this book in a very mysterious way, and who knows where the book came from, and that different people have added layers in that book. And the heavenly master is one of those people, but I couldn't figure out who exactly it was supposed to be. It's probably some Taoist that was living on a mountain or something. But Heavenly Master, or Tianshi, is also a name for Chibo, who was one of the teachers of Huangdi, the Yellow Emperor. But I don't really think he's talking about that, because that's way older than this would be. Anyway, here is the formula, and we'll talk about how it's used in a minute. But if you want to copy it down, just pause the video and you can copy it down. We can see some of the things from Xiaoyao San, like Chai Hu, Bai Xiao, Da Gui, and so forth. Fu Shen to calm, and Zhi to clear heat, because this had to do with fire. And Shi Changpu is one that opens consciousness and nourish yin and so forth. So, you would look at it and see what he's trying to do. He says to decoct this in water and to drink it. And then somebody added commentary. I don't know who. Again, I'm not that familiar with this book. I just found this passage. So this formula is called Sanhua Chu Dian Tang, forgive my pronunciation, which is flower dissipating. So it's getting rid of that sexual stuff, madness eliminating, decoction. And this just says what I said when I was talking on the previous slide. He continues on. If the patient refuses to take the medicine, people should use force, forcefully pour it into her. In other words, like hold her down, hold her mouth open, pour it into her mouth, and she has to drink it or she'll choke. Like make her drink it, they're saying. She will curse and scold endlessly, but after a long while, she'll become weary and want to sleep. When she wakes up after sleeping, she will feel ashamed of her behavior and shut herself in her room for 3 days. If you give her a little food and drink so she doesn't starve, she'll recover, and that's all you have to do. You don't have to do anything else. Just one dose, and she shouldn't be given it again. One dose should be enough. Wow, powerful formula. And then in another book by the same author, he has a discussion again of this flower madness. He says, he's talking about a case, it seems. A woman had episodes of madness and didn't feel shame about her behavior. She was sweet when she saw men, but she became enraged when she saw women. She even exposed her naked body. Wow. This was blazing liver fire. She longed for a man she could not have. This is binding constraint of liver, and it developed into madness. So now he goes and discusses the mechanism for this. Why did blazing liver fire develop into madness? It must be because the woman's liver wood was vigorous, like it was really strong. So there's lots of liver fire, and it forced its way into her heart, making the heart, who's the sovereign, who's the ruler, leave his palace. Like it's too hot in there. So the Shen, the sovereign, left the palace. However, it's the job of the pericardium. Here he uses the term bowel. There are a number of terms for pericardium. The pericardium is supposed to protect the heart from outside evils. So why did the pericardium allow this fire to enter the palace so that the, sovereign had to leave? The pericardium should have done a better job. So why? And he says, don't you know that liver fire is deficiency fire? So that's not always the way we look at it today in TCM style. But he's saying liver fire is fire from liver yin deficiency or liver and kidney yin deficiency. Deficiency fire and minister fire, which includes the pericardium, not just Mingmen. Okay, so the pericardium is in with deficiency fire. They're the same type. They protect the brigands, the thieves, the rebels, and they forget the sage's brightness, so they directly burn his palace. The sage's brightness would be the Shen and the intelligence and the mind. So he's saying that the pericardium is conspiring with this fire from yin deficiency and, is like actually let the fire in because it resonates, it's of the same kind. It resonates, the pericardium does with this fire. And so now the heart's not protected, and pericardium might protect against external evils, heat evils moving in, but that's different than fire that comes from yin deficiency, which is internal. Okay. So then the next question is, how is it that this patient only became mad and didn't die when the heart sovereign ran out of his palace? Because, when the Shen leaves, how are you going to stay alive? But yet this person went crazy, but they didn't die. Here's his answer. It must be because her kidney water came to the rescue. She had been longing for a man that she could not have because her kidneys were vigorous, right? Her kidneys were strong, and that gives a strong sex drive. Okay. Although there was kidney fire and kidney water was dried out, but when liver fire forced its way in, the heart still had enough support from kidney water. So, it was dried, but there was enough left to help the heart. And because of this, she only went mad. She didn't die. If kidney water was totally depleted, then she probably would have died. So the treatment method is to discharge liver wood and supplement kidney water, and at the same time move the constrained qi. So he used a formula with a similar name, flower dissipating, but now it's an elixir. And, he had a longer title for the other formula. And this is actually not the same formula, although it does have a lot of herbs in common. For example, it has Chai Hu and Fu Shen and Bai Xiao. Xuan Chen and Dongui were in it before, but Shangdi and Chen Pi and so forth were not. Anyway, if you want to write down this formula, you can pause the slide and copy it down. After 3 doses, her madness was gone. Remember, in the previous formula, it said just give her 1 dose. But here it took 3 doses. So that's what Chen Shiduo had to say about, oh no, he's not done yet. Okay, here's what he had to say about it. The formula is wonderful at discharging liver fire without consuming liver blood, and coursing, moving liver constraint without dissipating liver qi. Back then, they sometimes worried about liver qi deficiency, so that's what he's worried about here. So it can move liver qi without weakening liver qi. Even more wonderful, it supplements kidney water without helping the heart fire to flare up. When water is sufficient, wood gets what it needs to nourish it, and fire rests within wood without further intervention. So, wood, of course, is the mother of fire. So here it's saying that, this fire is, instead of flaring up and burning the wood, it's still nuzzling up to its mother like it should, because we need healthy fire within the body, but it's not it's resting, it's calm. When fire rests, the spirit is calm and the hun returns to the liver without further intervention. So apparently this agitates the hun too. Before he mentioned the Shen or the sovereign leaving the palace. Oh, well, here he has the spirit is calm. Yeah, so the Hun and the Shen are back in business. Moreover, this formula disperses phlegm and disinhibits water, which means promotes urination to get rid of fluids. Once the phlegm and qi are completely dispersed, then the water that was transformed from phlegm, the phlegm was transformed back into fluids instead of being thick. Now it's thinned out. And now these excess fluids can move into the urinary bladder and be urinated out of the body. So when all of this happens, there will be no more relapses of flower madness. Okay. So finally, I went to Jicheng, and Jicheng is database of ancient Chinese medical texts that has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and you can search for a keyword. So I searched for flower madness, and it only appeared 7 times in all of these hundreds of texts. So it's not really a big deal in the history of Chinese medicine, but it's interesting. Anyway, 3 of those mentions were from Chen Shiduo, the guy that we just read a couple of things from. 3 of them were just like not saying anything new, and so I ignored those 3. And then the one short one is here is the only other one that kind of had something to say. So this comes actually from a Japanese author, it seems, from 1936. So, relatively recent, less than 100 years. And he says, a woman who loves a man but cannot express her thoughts may reach the point of going crazy. This is named flower insanity, some different characters. It's also named flower madness, which is what we've been using all along, from Chen Shiduo. Then there's kind of a note that These two words for flower are actually two different words in Chinese. One of them is this word, hua, and the other is this word, hua, and both of them mean flowers, although there's some amount of tendency for this first one to be a flower on a tree, and the second one to be a flower that's growing up from the ground. It doesn't have to be. And then also, this first one means a lot of other things like brilliance, and it's often used to stand for China. So this has a lot of meanings. But here he's saying the meaning of this one in this passage is the same as the other one that's also HUA and pinyin. You don't probably care. I care about these things, but you don't. Anyway, so here, this is a little different. Instead of this woman just going crazy and jumping on any man she can find, this is somebody who's like madly in love. Don't we use phrases like that? Madly in love, but she can't express it to him. Maybe she's married to someone else, or it's just inappropriate. And so this drives her crazy. And so that's how he defines it. Anyway, hope you found this interesting. That's what I have to say.